I was having dinner with actually a friend and her husband, and their son is friends with our son from school. And he's a venture partner. And he said, Deepali, have you work all the time and you do all this amazing stuff with women. Have you ever thought of joining fund as a venture partner? And I was like, Steve, what is a venture partner? I don't even know. And then he explained it to me. My first check was into a company called Live Better With, which got sold, but not a great exit. Second was a company that went public. I would think that I did quite well. And then I've had several others that have now raised Series A from really, good funds and might be moving on to Series B. Saying no to phenomenal people is really hard. I think that's the toughest part of my job.
Thanks, Deepali, for joining us in this series, and very excited to learn about your journey, especially on the fact that you've made a mark for yourself outside India and how difficult it used to be early on. And I've read so many of your articles where you say that you want to go out there and support women founders. And at Speed Invest, you specifically had a department to fund women. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about that, and what was the need to specifically, head a department for women founders?
Absolutely. So I guess it's, I grew up in India and was the youngest of four daughters. My father was an entrepreneur, so learned a lot about entrepreneurship through him, and did not have many female role models at the time. And hoping to change that for my daughter, obviously. But women founders find it really hard to raise funding. They usually don't have the networks that male founders do. Women founders also tend not to be second-time founders. They tend to be first-time founders, and there is a bias in VC towards, pattern recognition and looking for second-time founders. So women find it extra hard to find funding. And thirdly, there are not as many women in investment management. And, as a woman, there are many businesses that women are building for that I can probably understand better. Not that men shouldn't make an effort to understand them, but it probably comes slightly easier to me. And research has also shown that, women are more likely to make investments into women. So we have this, lower penetration of senior women in investment management who can actually direct capital into women, and therefore women are generally underserved when it comes to, and underinvested when it comes to capital. So felt that, there was a huge need in the market. Of course, some of it is born out of some of my own experiences, having been a female employee, and maybe some of the biases I faced over the years that led me to this point. But I feel, I love investing and decided to focus on female founders because there was a huge need.
Yeah, and I'm excited to learn more about that space, because our series fully focuses on that and supporting both women investors as well who are raising fund of their own, and women founders. But like you said, that you faced some biases while growing up and working in different firms. So would you like to share a few instances of how it went about and how you've changed from being that to now?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously lots of, taboos growing up as an Indian girl in India when it comes to women's health. We invest at Speed Invest in women's health, and it's lots of things were never spoken about. So that obviously is changing now. There are younger women now talking about issues that we probably were not allowed to talk about. And it was not, I bought sanitary pads in Calcutta and were given, was given a brown paper package to put them in. That's what I grew up with in India, right? So that, of course, the equation has changed. But over the years, had lots of male champions at work, and still do, even at Speed Invest, who help me a lot in achieving my goals, but also have had scenarios where maybe I was passed over for a job because I was a woman, felt I was a woman who had two little children, and felt that bias. To be honest, I left the company and decided to work for myself. At that point, probably the lowest point in my career, because I was quite successful, quite young, but also taught me a lot about building my own brand. And that's how it evolved into investing in women, advising women, because I felt it was born out of my own, almost out of my own story, and got to this point investing in women.
Yeah, now that we got speaking about your story, it will be great for our audience if you could highlight how your journey has been so far from Calcutta to UK now.
Yeah, I mean, there was lots in the middle. There was New York in the middle, spent some time in Hong Kong as well for a few weeks, and actually then went back to India to live in Pune. I was setting up a back office there. So lots between India and the UK. But really, for the last 7 years, 8 years since I left the corporate world, I've been advising female founders on their fundraisers. That's how I started, doing small angel checks, getting bits of equity because founders couldn't really pay me, and evolved into then investing on behalf of Atomico, which is a large European VC fund. They gave me angel capital, which actually helped me a lot because it suddenly gave me more dry powder than I probably had to invest in women, and did 30 or 35 angel checks into female founders, then joined SpeedInvest as a venture partner. And again, with the focus on female founders, I think I was very lucky because they brought me on to do what I love. And like they say, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's how I feel. And I work a lot, but I feel like I love what I do and therefore continue to do it. And then joined this year full time as a partner at SpeedInvest, again, with the focus on female founders and diversity. And for those who don't know, SpeedInvest, we're a pre-seed and seed European VC fund. We actually also invest in the emerging markets. We have 20 fintech investments in the emerging markets, including one in India called Bank Open. I cover India for the fund as well. So yeah, that's my journey, and that's what I do every day. Outside of that, I'm co-founder of an angel community, a pro bono community called Alma Angels, which I created to help create the next generation of female angel investors, because women traditionally feel that, they're not wealthy enough, need to write big checks to be angels, and also don't have access to quality deal flow. So we created almost like an educational community where women could learn from each other and begin angel investing.
Right. And since you said that you support women founders, do you also suggest them having a co-founder by their side, or you're okay with solo women founders as well? Because those are the pools which receive the most least capital.
That's right. I mean, it is hard, not just being a solo female founder, it's hard being a solo founder. So I will say that VCs or investors tend to prefer a team of 2 or 3 rather than one, because as you can imagine, building a business, building product, selling, fundraising, it's really hard for one person to do it all. So I don't think it's wrong to expect a co-founder. Of course, we have invested more recently in a sole female founder, but she brought on board a co-founder. So she started the company on her own, and then she brought on a tech co-founder. But I don't think it's wrong, because I think it is hard to do everything, especially if you're trying to build a really big business.
Yeah, that's right. And you said that you moved on the corporate ladder quite early as well. You said you got success. But how is it while promotion? Because in terms of hiring, women generally don't like to talk about their achievements as much as men do. And that's also the reason why at fresher level, you see so many women entering the world of investment, but going up the ladder, the level keeps on dropping down. So, did you also face such kind of challenges? And if so, what are some of the other reasons as well as to why we see such less representation on the top?
Yeah, I mean, lots of women start out, as you say, even in, investment banking or investment management. And to be honest, you almost see, I don't know about India, and I would think this is true, but women tend to then start a family or get married, and it's really hard to keep up with the jobs we have. I mean, I look at so many businesses every day. I work every Sunday. I think it's very hard to do with a family unless you have a really good support system. So I would think that some women just naturally drop off or used to drop off, and hopefully that is changing. And of course, promotion is and career progression is a very big piece of this. I think at SpeedInvest, we take this very seriously. We almost measure, how many of our women are getting promoted versus how many of our men are getting promoted. But I don't think, all companies think like that. We also think very inclusively about recruitment when it comes to people of color and women, and make sure that we see enough candidates and not just see male candidates. For instance, we make a concerted effort, right? But yes, women tend not to talk about their achievements, and it starts at a very young age. I was governor of a primary school here in London, and I remember one of the coaches telling me that we're asking the little girls, I think they were 6 and 7 and 8, about their achievements, and they basically said, we don't want to, it feels like we're boasting rather than, we don't want to talk about it. So I think it starts at a very young age. We obviously want to break those norms. I have a daughter and she has no qualms talking about achievements, and sometimes I'm like, shh. But I obviously like the fact that she talks about achievements, because it's so important, because women tend not to do that. And you're absolutely right. Some of it is just retraining our mind to think differently. And women also, I feel, have to have, and I find this of female founders, everything has to be perfect, or women in general, everything has to be perfect for them to throw their CV in to apply for a job, as opposed to a man who, maybe 70% of the way there, he'll be like, I want to apply for this job because, what, the 30% doesn't matter, or I'll get there in the end and I'll fake it till I make it. But, there are these differences between men and women. But some of it is obviously changing ourselves, but a lot of it is changing the system, and to accept that this is okay. This is a humble quality to have and an authentic quality to have, right?
Yeah. Speaking of qualities, a lot of women also feel that they're moving more towards being aggressive or ruthless, because they feel that to fit in a man's world, this is what is required. And they lose out on their original natural qualities, trying to be like somebody else. So did you also have to try to do that to adapt into a certain culture at some point in time in your life? Or have you
Well,
seen
I'm very feminine, and most people who work with me know that I'm very feminine. I don't think, I think you can be feminine and firm at the same time, to get your point across. I'm not loud outside of the home unless I'm screaming at my children. But that's who I am. And I can't really change myself for anybody, right? So again, it's less about changing yourself, but using your strengths to your advantage. So I do use my feminine strengths to my advantage rather than have to be masculine, for instance, right? But I think we as leaders need to have a blend of skills. Some might be slightly more masculine and some might be slightly more feminine, and it all needs to come together to make us who we are. But I have never tried to change myself. That's who I am. But I will say that women, and I have heard this many a time when a female founder is pitching, men do say, oh, you know what, she's too sweet. And that doesn't mean anything, because you can be sweet and still be able to build a business. Secondly, I have also heard men say she's super aggressive when she's negotiating with us. And I've said, I think that's fantastic, because after us, she's going to go negotiate with someone else in the next round. And I want her to be exactly like this. So I think women, I think, get a double whammy everywhere. Either you're too sweet, or you're too aggressive, or you're never quite perfect. But I think it's best to be your authentic self. I've never, ever changed. And I don't think I will, but and I have had to deal with it, but there are lots of very, female founders who are trying to emulate being more aggressive, because they feel that's the only way out.
Yeah, but like you said, it's true that as a leader, you need to adopt the good side of both the genders. It's not like you only lean towards what you are and what God has.
Exactly. And sometimes you have to be firm and harsh, and sometimes you have to be kind and gentle. And to be honest, a lot of it I've dealt with as a parent, right? So maybe it's slightly easier for me.
Yeah. Motherhood maybe helped you embrace.
Yes. a
Politics.
lot. Sorry.
Yeah, but being a working mother, how is it in terms of your productivity? Like you told before, that a supportive family really helps you work even on Sundays, but not all families allow that to a women. But do you see that changing in Europe, at least since you've been there for a larger part
Yeah.
of your life now?
I mean, I think it's very tough for women, to be honest, and it's not easy for me. And I have a very supportive husband. He has always been very supportive right from the start. He's always said to me, if you want to work, that's great. If you don't want to work, that's great. Of course, he knows I love to work. So but he's been an equal parent, if not more, an equal mother, I would say, to my children. He takes them for sports. He can sit and do math with them. He can he plays board games. He does everything that, I would probably do, and more. And that has helped me a lot. And I think my children have also grown up seeing a working mother. So it's easier for them, right? Because they know that they cannot have me at their beck and call. And to be honest, I think they like that. I think they're very independent children. I don't ask them, is your homework done? That is not a question that I ask them. I'm always like, how was your day? How was sports? How was the movie? I don't think we discuss, and maybe I should spend more time on it, but those are not questions we discuss. We talk about politics, or we talk about work and what busy. My son is always like, so tell me about the companies you met today. So I think they understand what I do. Maybe he spends a lot more time on video games than if I was not a working mother, but it's just some things you just learn to live with. You can't be perfect at everything. You can't be everywhere at every event, every parent teacher meeting. It's okay to divide and conquer. It's okay for him, my husband, to be there sometimes. It's okay for me to be there sometimes, as long as we are communicating. And having those moments, I do try to spend some time alone with each of my children every week, whether it's going to the bookshop or going to a walk or going for dinner, just with one of them, because then I feel I've had some quality time alone.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear that your children actually ask you about your work and what you do and try to engage in it.
My son definitely does. My daughter is a teenager, so quite sassy and talks to me about the things she wants to talk about. But my son definitely asks me, so tell me about the companies. What does this company do? What did you think of it? So, yeah.
Okay. How old is he?
He will be 13 on
Oh,
Sunday. Yeah.
oh, very nearby then. Wish him happy birthday from my side.
Thank you. I will.
Yeah, because you're at home and they might ask you, how was it? What did you talk?
Yeah. I told him, please don't come inside. I'm doing something important.
Yeah, but speaking of women in investing, the color of message really changes when a woman asks for a fund raise, or maybe uh, targets a higher ambition. For example, if she wants to take her company to 100 crore, the investor would be like, how on earth are you going to do that? And if a male says that, they will be like, yeah, that's a really good target to achieve, good job on that. So why is it that they are discounted at face value?
So there's these, a lot of research has been done by this woman called Dana Kanze. I don't know if you know her, but she's an LBS professor. She was originally at Columbia. And it's essentially what you call prevention versus promotion questions when women are pitching. And men get asked questions around growth and vision, and women get ask questions around, like, oh, how do you think you're going to make this, or around really risk mitigation, or what will you do if this business, if this strategy doesn't work out. So and I think that is unconscious bias. We all have biases. There's some unconscious bias in the system that we need to be told. So when we are doing these types of things at SpeedInvest, we've done unconscious bias training, just so we understand that we might be doing this, because sometimes you're doing it, you don't even realize you're doing this, right? So that's one of the reasons we do unconscious bias training. So I mean, these are things that are ingrained in us for so many years. That is, and I believe women also, female investors also ask those types of questions, because many women have grown up with male investors around them because of the dominance of men in the investment management industry. So you start as an analyst and you reach principal or partner, and you know what? You've been surrounded by men, so you begin thinking and talking like them. So this is a bias that comes from men and women. And to be honest, it's only over time and through conscious effort that you can get rid of this.
Yeah, you mentioned about this unconscious bias training. What is it about and what do you entail in that?
Yeah, so essentially it's about understanding that we're asking these types of questions and coming up with a set of questions where you want to get to the like where you still want to ask a question, but you ask it differently. So we did training around, many people don't realize that they're asking these questions. So the first step is making sure that you're like, this is the type of questioning that there's a bias here. And then how can you ask this question differently?
Oh, that's nice. So SpeedInvest does this, or you do it through?
No, SpeedInvest is our fund. We had an outside company come and do it. The outside companies in the UK who do this diversity training and unconscious bias training.
Oh, that's very nice, because we were anyways looking for some trainers for Indians to speak on these topics. So if you could just let me know the name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate. Cool. And today only I was speaking to another woman in Australia, and she was telling me the way women invest and pitch for their products. It's very different, because they will tell you what they're doing in present and not present to you a bigger picture of what they would want to do 5 or 10 years later. But the investors anyways want to see the vision first and then come to what you're doing in terms of the execution. So since you invest in women, is that the style you also have observed? In terms of
women tend to just be more authentic in their pitching, and they focus more on what they've achieved. You're right, rather than the big picture. To be honest, I want to know both. I want to know current traction and I want to know vision, because ultimately, but I do also see that changing. I think women have also started realizing that they need to pitch bigger visions. And I think some of it is changing, some of it is generational. So that change is coming. But yes, women tend to focus more and be more data driven on their current execution rather than their vision.
Yeah, that's right. And in terms of mentorship support, what else do you give to founders apart from the capital? How do you open up your other networks?
Yeah. So at SpeedInvest, we have a team called the platform team, and they help with recruiting, they help with business development. They help with even helping do the pitch decks, and they help with growth, marketing. And separately, outside of that team, we as investment managers obviously help a lot with fundraising, strategy. We're on the boards, we help connect. Founders that we invest in are always on our mind, and we do go out and meet a lot of people. So we always obviously open our Rolodexes for our founders. And to be honest, I also try and help the founders that we haven't invested in, because women don't have those networks. So if I meet a super strong founder and for some reason we can't invest in them, there's a portfolio conflict, or they might not be building to the scale that we want, I always try and introduce them to other funds.
Yeah, got it. In terms of networking is very important, be it for a VC or a founder. But women tend to lack that, or they tend to fear that, how do I network in a room full of men? I only see maybe 6-7 people wearing pantsuit or saris, or maybe in India your dupattas and all. But so how can we change that dynamics and still make women feel comfortable in the current landscape, which is still male dominated, we agree or not?
Yeah, I will say it's not easy. And it's funny that one of my colleagues, we were talking about networking, and just yesterday she said to me, she's like, oh, you're just natural at networking. And I was like, and then she paused for 2 minutes and she's like, oh, maybe you've learned it over time. And I was like, it's definitely something I learned over time. I was the most introverted child in my family. I don't think I ever left my mother. In fact, my sisters would be like, why don't you just go inside, mom, and live because you're always stuck to her. I don't think I ever spoke much, when I was little. Of course, that changed when I went to university. I think I kind of, maybe in my teenage years, I started growing up a bit and changing. But to be honest, I was a complete introvert. And I don't think I could have ever networked. And now I feel it has been a learned skill, and maybe now comes more naturally to me. But even I find it hard going into a room full of men after all these years. And I love networking events where, it's a balance, or there are lots of women. And recently I spoke at a conference in Paris, which was the first women in VC conference in Europe. And it was a room full of like 300 women. And I was like, this is phenomenal. I've never been in a room full of so many female investment managers. But it's something we just have to learn, because this, and I, also tell our associates, it's okay to reach out cold. I've reached out cold to many, many people on LinkedIn and said, this is what I do. And this is before my time at SpeedInvest. I built a bulk of my network. Of course, I still meet new people every day, but I built the bulk of my network when I was working on my own, advising women and really working for myself. Had no brand name behind me and built a brand for myself, but reached out cold to many people, because the worst they can do is not reply or say, sorry, I'm busy, right? But at least I reached out. I met so many people on my own. So I think it's a very important part of what we do as investment managers. Or forget that, even as individuals, most people there's a much higher likelihood of getting a job through someone than through a recruiter. I mean, these are facts that we know. It's much higher likelihood of meeting a good founder through your network, right? Or reaching out cold, where you're trying to develop that relationship with the founder. So I think networks are very, very important.
Yeah, that's right. And I think
and it's not easy. I would say that sometimes I go to, when I know that an event is going to be seriously male dominated, then I usually am like, oh, is there a female friend or someone? I'm not usually a friend, but what I mean is a colleague or someone who is in the same industry, but I know her well. She can come along with me. So at least I feel like I have a wing woman, or she has a wing woman, and then we can work the room together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that community support really helps, where you have your peers also tag along with you at these events, so that you don't have the fear of being left out, both in terms of gender and your presentation of ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, but speaking of this fact that you might be investing into a range of products, but when it comes to certain consumer products which are women centric, a lot of male VCs don't understand. For example, if a woman is selling a lipstick which lasts longer than the traditional lipsticks and wants to create a dent in the market, a male VC would question why is it even required, and wouldn't even take the time out to understand the pitch that she is making. So how does that help when you have women on the other side evaluating your business, which is women centric?
Yeah, so obviously, I think women, like I said earlier on, when we first started out, that women, I invested in a flushable sanitary pad because I knew that sanitary pads go into the landfill in like bulk. And if there was a flushable equivalent, it's phenomenal, right? So why not invest in that IP? Maybe men don't understand that. I don't know how, because they tend to have mothers and sisters, and many of them have, siblings, daughters who might be women. So they should be able to understand the magnitude of the problem, but somehow they might not make the time. So, of course, it's easier for us to understand women's health issues because we've gone through them ourselves. But having said that, as an investor, I will never know about any sector I'm looking at as much as the entrepreneur, and I have to educate myself very quickly on blockchain, crypto, embedded finance, Kenyan financial services, all sorts of things that I look at every day. So I think men need to do the same. So I will say that it's very important that we as investors, that's how we find opportunity. If we are going to be closed-minded, we're never going to be find interesting things, because if we only keep investing in what we know, then at some point it's just going to run out.
Yeah, that's true. But how do you keep yourself updated with all of these things if you invest in so many sectors?
Yeah, I think it's obviously SpeedInvest, we're very sector specialists. So we have 6 teams in health, in financial services.
Deepali, sorry to interrupt. I lost your voice.
I think can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry. So we 6 teams and I sit horizontally across the teams, but I tend to spend more time in certain areas. So I will spend more time in health. I've done health for many years. I do financial services in India, so I'll do Indian fintech, and I'll do climate. I love climate. I've spent some time on marketplaces, but not that much. I'm not much of a consumer investor. I've done some SaaS, but I've been doing it for so many years that ultimately it's about the fundamentals of investing in people and businesses and industries you just have to learn very quickly about. We also have sector specialists, so it's not like I'm trying to learn everything, because we have teams of people who are very good at what they do and have been doing it for years. So it's about tapping into those pockets of knowledge within the firm and then filling the gaps. Where we don't know something, we learn very quickly. And that's how we do it. But of course, last weekend I was learning about Kenyan financial services, and I read 1,000 pages in on my weekend just about M-Pesa, because it's something I wanted to learn about. So you just have to figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, that also highlights the fact that you really need to be passionate about research and reading if you want to get into a VC firm. Otherwise, it can be a really tough task for some people who don't enjoy that.
Or you can listen to books nowadays
Yeah.
as opposed to read them. But yes, you need to be very curious, very interested in learning very fast.
Yeah, that's right. And in terms of, you invest in a lot of innovative products as well, like you spoke about this flushable pads. So can you mention some more of them that our audience also?
Yeah. So the flushable pad was obviously an angel investment. We as a fund tend not to invest in product. We're software investors. But as an angel, I invested in flushable sanitary pad, invested in a bioplastic business. So they're producing packaging for consumer products from bacteria in the lab. I invested in an alternative egg company. And, looked at lots of different things, but these were quite interesting a few years ago and finally fall under the climate bucket because they're alternatives to what you normally use in food or on consumer product. But as a fund also, we invest in lots of disruptive software. Doesn't have to be products, but the product investments have been my personal ones.
Understood. And which are some of your anti-portfolios, so to speak? Regret, missing investing.
Yeah, I feel like there was one VR business that was enabling content creation for retailers, enabling an e-shop to be able to show all their their products using virtual reality. Super strong founder. I should have done an angel ticket and I didn't, and always regret. Again, I haven't followed, but I would think she's doing quite well. So and there's always, I'm also not a big anti-portfolio person, because I feel there'll always be something, I'm not a FOMO investor, right? Firstly. So, and until there's an exit, you never really know how the businesses have done, because you hear about so much capital being raised, but then you see fundamentally unit economics have, failed to materialize and the business is shutting down. So I have had one company that went public. It was a fintech company, again, as an angel. But what I mean is I feel there'll always be an opportunity to invest in good people. So I think less of an anti-portfolio. But yes, there are sometimes I'm like, I should have just done that because I should have gone with my gut feel. So.
Got it. And in terms of angel investing, what would you suggest women to start with? What did you start with as an angel investor?
Yeah, so I started with obviously investing with other people.
Which was
very important. Sorry?
If you could also mention about your first check.
My first check was into a company called Live Better With, which got sold, but not a great exit. Second was a company that went public. So, I would think that I did quite well. And then I've had several others that have now raised Series A from really, good funds and might be moving on to Series B. But again, no other exits yet, right? So this is a long game. This is a game to build a big, good company. It takes 8 to 10 years. It's not a short-sighted thing, right? So obviously started investing firstly in areas that I love or was passionate about, right? Where you feel there's a need that needs to be met. I also spent a lot of time meeting founders, because I think the more founders you meet, the better you get at somehow feeling right about the founder you want to invest in. So invested in a founder this summer when I was on holiday in Mexico. I met her right before I left, and then did the deal actually while I was away working, waking up every day at 4:30 in the morning while on holiday in Mexico City, because that's when my family was asleep and I could get some time. But you meet, you read, you talk to people, you build a community, you learn with other people, you learn how to look at businesses. Obviously, it came more naturally to me because I came from a finance background, right? I did investment banking, private equity. So slightly more naturally to me. I had read lots of legal docs before I came into VC. So I kind of knew how things work. I know how to build pivot tables and financial models, even though I don't do it as much anymore, but it came more naturally to me. But otherwise, I think it's about meeting other angels and talking to them about why they're investing. That's the most fun part. And the second is being, you learn about something that you know nothing about. So that intellectual curiosity always drove me to invest.
Understood. Also, in one of your interviews, you said that you didn't know what a definition of venture partner is until a friend's husband told you about it.
Yeah, I can't believe you read it. But yeah, I think I was having dinner with actually a friend and her husband, and their son is friends with our son from school. And he's a venture partner. And he said, Deepali, have you work all the time and you do all this amazing stuff with women. Have you ever thought of joining fund as a venture partner? And I was like, Steve, what is a venture partner? I don't even know. And then he explained it to me. And then I was like, okay, maybe who should I reach out to in my network? Again, coming back to network, I was like, he was in my network. He explained to me what a venture partner was. Like, now, next step, let me reach out to 2-3 people in my network who don't have offices in London, because I'm based in London. So it could be an American fund or a European fund, and figure out if they need a venture partner, because the venture partner role is never advertised. It's not like you go to a recruiter and say, I'm looking for a venture partner. It's someone known to the fund, a relationship you've built. And so that's how I reached out to somebody who I used to talk to at SpeedInvest a lot, Felix. I wrote to Felix, and I said, Felix, if you know of any European funds, since you're sitting in Vienna, that might be looking for a venture partner, please think of me. And he sent my email to the managing partner of SpeedInvest, who then emailed me back and said, why don't we talk? And that's how it happened.
Wow. I mean, it's just about fearlessly asking away and not shying away from keeping things in your mind and thinking to yourself that, oh, is this question stupid enough to be asked?
Yeah. And to be honest, like with founders, it's a lot of it is just about execution. It's just about doing it.
Yeah. You also teach financial planning to a lot of women, is it?
No, I don't think so. I need to spend some more time on financial planning for myself. My husband's always like, do you have the list of all the investments you've made and what price you invested at and where are they now? And I'm like, yeah, I have a list, but it's like some fudged paper list that I really need to spend some more time. I just don't have enough time in the day to do it. But yes, I need to be first teaching financial planning to myself.
Understood. But on a month, how many checks do you write as an angel on an average?
So I'm not allowed to do any more angel checks at SpeedInvest. So I don't write any more angel checks. I only write checks for SpeedInvest as a fund.
Okay, so for consumer products, like you said, the company
they were all older, so I've done them over the last few years. Yeah.
Okay, understood. So you're not focusing on consumer as of now?
No, I'm not. I mean, as a fund, we do consumer. We have a team called Consumer and Marketplaces. I'm not a consumer investor at all, by the way. I did the flushable sanitary pad because of the IP. Yeah. I did the bioplastic packaging because of the IP, because I think these things need to change, but I'm not a consumer investor. I'm not very good at identifying the next best lipstick or the next best brand. I'm not. I tend to invest more in B2B, business to business, whether it's software or health or consumer can be a lot of fun, but I'm not the right person for consumer.
Got it. Cool. As we move into the last segment of the interview, I have some rapid fire questions that I'll ask. It's something which many people love. It's like the exciting part of the interview. So the
Okay.
first question is like, which of the products of your founders do you use in your personal life as well?
So I have used the flashable sanitary pad. So obviously I used it as an MVP and gave feedback. And then they asked me to be in the launch video, which I couldn't because they didn't have time. But once it launches, I will be using it 200%.
Got it. And what's the hard truth about being a venture capitalist?
I think it's saying no to phenomenal people is really hard. I think that's the toughest part of my job, because sometimes we meet amazing founders who are building amazing things, but they might not be large enough for us in terms of outcome. And sometimes we feel, it's a great founder, but not a great business model, because we've seen so many. But in any case, I think that's the hardest part of the job, is saying no.
Yeah. And for a founder?
Sorry.
Hard truth about founder, yeah.
Sorry, the hardest thing about being a founder, is that the question?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I'm not a founder, but I would think fundraising, building a company, all of it, recruiting, depends on your skill set, right? So not a founder, so can't really answer that. But I think as an investor, the hardest thing is about saying no.
Got it. And what's the biggest risk in terms of investing your own money as an angel that you encounter?
90% chance you won't get it back.
Okay, so you only invest when you have lots of it.
I mean, you invest when, or you write smaller checks, have a diversified, larger portfolio, rather than putting all your eggs in one basket. You invest over, several companies. But I will say that it's a very high risk asset class. So the high likelihood that you won't get your money back.
Right. As an investor, would you prefer to wish that you had more time or more money?
$1 million question, right? Because I always wish for more time. Obviously, because that gives me more time to be productive. But obviously, I would love more money, because then I could invest more into women. Actually, super interesting question. I have to really think about that one, and I will after this interview. But I think for me, obviously, having more hours in the day, so I don't have to work on a Sunday, it would be quite useful.
Yeah. Got it. Good, you chose one, because I was thinking this question will end on both the sides of what to choose. Yeah. Also, how is it that you find the right opportunity? Some 3-step methodology, maybe, if you have, as to how do you scan the market and look for small baby unicorns in the jungle and see, okay, this can.
So I obviously, like I said, read a lot. So sometimes met a super interesting company recently, reached out to them cold on LinkedIn, because I was researching something else in the space. And therefore, I do tend to map the space out. So if somebody I see that's building something, then I want to understand who else is building it in the space. So, and that often leads to, something else that you find that's interesting, just lying, waiting to be found. Yeah. I also like companies to be honest, that nobody else has met, as opposed to looking at companies that everybody's looking at. So I'm less of that, let's try and win this deal against someone else. I'm like, let's try and find this deal before someone else finds it. So I'm quite, and it doesn't always happen, but that is my preferred method. Or, you know what, I want to build a relationship with this founder early enough, so when they are raising, they will think of me first and come to me first. And so that relationship building bit is very important for us in VC. And it's always about being able to help other people beyond thinking of yourself, which is how you build good relationships, right? So then helping people you might have nothing ever to do with, because you know what, that goodwill will always come back, because that founder will talk to another founder and mention you.
Yeah. Thinking of an impact in relationships is also one thing, apart from thinking of impact in the investments you make.
Yes, 100%. I think relationship building is a very key part of our job in VC.
Yeah. And fundamentals that you look at in a pitch deck when a founder is pitching?
Yeah. So obviously founding team, what is their background and why do they want to build this business? So the founder market fit, the size of the market opportunity, how large is this market, who are the current players and how much capital have they already raised? For me, it's very important that the product that they're building is disruptive and not incremental. So is this just a step change or is this doing something completely different? Yeah. So because for really large outcomes, you can't have a step change. You need disruption, right? So that is very important. But ultimately, we invest in the earliest stages, and I always think about like business model monetization. I know these are all things that are hard to look at when it's early on, and you assume that if you invest in the best people, they'll figure it out. But I do try and at least test that a little bit. I want to be able to invest in people who are thinking on their feet. I love intellectually curious people who are reading a lot, who know what's going on in the industry. Do they know the industry well enough? Because ultimately they will be selling to those people in that industry. So knowing the industry is super important for me. So lots of different things, but these are some of them.
Got it. And as an investor, what's the definition of scale for you? Because for many people, it differs.
Yeah. Scale is something, I guess, as an angel is different. You can have a nice exit even with smaller scale businesses, right? Obviously not lifestyle scale. You need to have a few 100 million exit as an angel. And then for us as a fund, it's north of $1 billion.
Okay, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, what is it that we can do to increase women representation in investments and in entrepreneurship?
Yeah. I mean, I would think that women who are already in senior positions can really move by, mentoring and recruiting women from, when they are younger and helping them through career progression, mentoring them through their careers. We take this very seriously at SpeedInvest. We do a lot of this, making sure that women don't drop off. And with female founders, it's coming, at least in Europe. I don't know about India, but I know in the UK, there are a lot more female founders than when I first started working with them, and a lot more ambitious female founders building at scale. And, encouraging entrepreneurship in universities and encouraging entrepreneurship from a young age is very important because they don't tend to have as many role models. And female founders who have been successful definitely can encourage and help and support and mentor younger female founders.
Got it. I just got also reminded of the fact that you said you networked a lot with people on LinkedIn and you sent cold emails without having the fear of rejection. And I'm sure you might be getting a lot of cold emails now as well as an investor from founders.
I do.
How is it an email catches your attention? What differentiation do you have?
Yeah. So Shell Works, I invested in out of a message cold on LinkedIn. She reached out to me and she said, I've read about you and I know what you like to invest in. You've invested in the flushable sanitary pad in Planera. I'm building in climate as well. And this is details about my business. And I wrote her back because, to be honest, she had actually taken the time to understand what I like to invest in and done a little bit of research. I get a lot of messages which have no application to me at all. And usually when it's a woman, I always respond and say, sorry, but this is not an investment area, or sorry, but to be honest, I can only do so much of that responding because I have so much inbound. But with men, I shouldn't say this, but then I don't respond because I'm like, they have not made an effort to really understand that I only tend to invest in female founders. But I think being targeted is not like a spray and pray. You really have to be quite targeted. Is this the right investor for me? Should I be reaching out to them? What can I get out of this? And am I relevant to them? Is very important for that hit rate.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm sure people who reach out to you after this interview will be very much pointed in their message.
And so since this interview is going out in India, I will say that in India, we invest in fintech, very important. And we will also look at health businesses, health tech. Those are two areas. And we invest in pre-seed and seed, so quite early on. And they need to be large, disruptive ideas. and happy to meet female or mixed teams in fintech and health.
Right. But when you speak of disruption, is it the market disruption in their geography or in the world? What is it that you look at?
No, so for us, obviously, you have to start in India. You're not going to start with disruption in the world, right? Of course, you want Uber is all over the world now, but when Uber started, they were probably only disrupting their city. So ultimately, for a business to be unicorn and beyond, you have to build a disruptive business. Either the local market is large enough to enable that disruption. If not, it has to be outside of the local market. But when we are first start out, they are obviously in the local markets.
Yeah, I was just about to take this example of Uber and Ola because it's the same replication, and many people will have this confusion that what is disruption? Do we not replicate the same thing for our market because the scale is huge and so is the demand? But yeah, you've clarified it.
Yeah.
And I think it was really great speaking with you. Many insights on what your fund is about, how you're supporting women founders, and I'm sure you're going to get more inbounds than what you already do. So maybe male founders should not write.
Yes. No, if they're a mixed team, it's all
Yeah.
for mixed teams, men and women, because it's always more diversity is better than less.
Yeah, that's correct. But cool, we are short of time, otherwise I would have asked some more questions.
Thank you so much for having me.